Ted Boardman back with the next installment of our brick mapping tutorial. We have our brick size correctly. We made 3 bricks across, 8 bricks vertically. We determined that that covered a 2 foot by 2 foot space. We mapped that onto our wall and set our UVW map size to 2 feet by 2 feet. The problem is, if I render this scene, I've added a light by the way, if I render this scene, we have that very repetitive pattern that just looks amateurish. Again, if this were a bitmap, it would be a bit difficult to reduce that because we don't have any real flexibility in our map without going to Photoshop and doing a lot of playing around. But because we're using the tiles procedural map, we've got much more flexibility in fixing this. Let's see what the problem is. We have bricks that have a base color with some color variance, and I've added a little bit of fade variance to make it more noticeable. That is a random color change over our sampling of bricks. And our sampling of bricks is relatively small, 2 feet by 2 feet, limited number of bricks there. When we repeat that every 2 feet over our surface, it causes our repetitive pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the number of bricks in the sample to get more randomness. So I'll multiply the number of bricks by a factor of 10. So instead of 3 horizontal, I'll do 30 horizontal, and instead of 8 courses vertically, I'll do 80. So that gives us the same aspect ratio for each brick. However, the bricks have disappeared, and all I see is the grout color in our scene. If we look down here, we see that the horizontal gap and the vertical gap of the grout is 0.5. Now, I have no idea what that number represents. It certainly isn't a half an inch because it's not consistent. So I've never been able to find out exactly what the number represents. But I do know that if I've increased the sampling of bricks by a factor of 10 and the grout is too large, it's probably too large by a factor of 10. So I'm going to divide these numbers by 10. 0.05, and if I hit enter, they both change because they're locked together. So we have consistent bricks. Now if I render our scene, the bricks are, what's happening? The bricks are the right size? No, they're not. Certainly not. What happened? We increased the number of bricks by a factor of 10 in the sample to get more randomness. However, we're still projecting that into a 2 foot by 2 foot space. So the bricks individually are much too small. I need to select my object, go to my UVW mapping modifier, and increase the size of the area covered by a factor of 10. 20 feet by 20 feet instead of 2 feet by 2 feet. Now if I render the scene, the bricks have the correct aspect ratio, the bricks are the correct size, they're positioned correctly. If they weren't, I could fix it, but you see here that it's a whole brick, half brick, etc. So by increasing the number of bricks in the sampling, we have randomized the color variance and fade variance over a larger area. The pattern is still repeating, but it's now repeating every 20 feet, which is hardly noticeable by most people's visualization. Easy to fix because it's a procedural map, and now we understand how this tile pattern works. When we come back, we're going to look at some more options that we might have, and we're going to look at a technique called masking in order to give us multiple brick materials on this single wall object.